My name is Javier Cordoba, and I'm talking now about the PPT, the Working Peoples Party, that was founded in 2010, December of 2010.
And why did you form this party?
We formed the party. The party is an electoral party in one way. I mean, we founded the party to participate in the elections, even though we are convinced that we need to combine the electoral process with the fight in the streets. So that's one of the our main campaigns, or how do you say, mottos, like
principles,
slogans. Is that it's in the ballots and in the streets, because we know if even if we get the government, we don't have the power. I mean, we are very clear about that.
So this is the only workers' party in Puerto Rico.
It's the only one. The previous one was the Partido Socialista de Puertorriqueño, the PSP, which was founded in late 60s, 71, from the movement for independence. And that party, it was a Marxist party. It declared the Marxist party and workers' party. I mean, and it went to the elections actually in 1976. It got a little bit more than 10,000 votes, which is a good amount of votes for a party that is telling that it's Marxist. You know, in the Cold War, they mobilized a lot of workers daily. I mean, it has a lot of influence in the labor movement. Mm-hmm. But in the elections of 1980, the nationalist component of the party got like a majority, and they ended up almost voting for the Partido Popular Democrático, the PDP, to fight against annexionism. And that's, the party, was dissolved. They transformed to another movement, which is the Movimiento, what's the name of it? They eliminated the socialist part in the name, and that was after the other one. Now there's a movement called Movimiento Independentista Nacional Ostosiano, which is the what is left from the PSP. But it was a really important party in the 1970s. The PPT, Working Peoples Party, is a broad party. I mean, it's not declared socialist, neither independence, for independence. But if you see the program is, the word socialist is not there, but the program is it's very, very to the left.
One of the issues, now is the United States, the banks want to privatize, and they've been privatizing the economy of Puerto Rico.
Definitely, and in Puerto Rico, the labor movement and the people in general have been opposing privatization for a long time. The first big privatization project of the political parties in Puerto Rico was the privatization of the telephone company. Which was the Puerto Rican telephone company.
What year was that?
That was the first tried was in 1984, and the people blocked it. I mean, we won that fight. They couldn't do it, and then in 1998, another government from the different party, that was the Partido Popular, that tried to, in the first place, Rafael Hernández Colón, and then Governor Pedro Rosselló. He went up again with the privatization of the telephone company in 1998, and there was a huge general strike in Puerto Rico. I mean, probably 70 or 80% of the people opposed the privatization of the telephone company. And this is a very complex situation. In that moment, I'm going to talk about this on Saturday. The governor approved a law to allow collective bargaining for the public employees, and that some AFL-CIO unions were looking for that project. So they, in the middle of the fight against the privatization of the Puerto Rico Telephone Company, then the unions, international unions, U.S. unions, they favored this project, and they didn't want to fight against the privatization because it would, affect the possibilities that the law was approved. That was Law 45. And it was a terrible law. It allowed the unionization of the central government employees, but illegal to strike, illegal to make any collective action against the government. It's a terrible law. Actually, in the University of Puerto Rico, the professors don't have the right to collective bargaining, and even with that, we didn't want that law to apply to the University of Puerto Rico. We fought for the exclusion of the university of that law, because the law is terrible. I mean, you go to negotiate with your hands, tied. But it was a very nice move by Governor Rosselló, because it divided the labor movement, and it weakened the fight against the privatization. Even when that happened, there was a general strike for 3 days. I mean, the huge mobilizations of workers and in general. And
what year was that?
1998. 1998. And then it happened a very sad thing that the union that was leading the fight against the privatization was the Independent Union of Telephone Workers. UIET, Unión Independiente de Empleados Telefónicos. They had internal elections, and the leader of that movement lost the elections, and then won a guy that didn't want to fight. And that was like 1 month before the strike that he had to do anyway, because the movement was so strong that even when he didn't want the strike in the telephone company, workers were, they went above him, and they made a strike that lasted for, I don't remember exactly, but probably like 30 days. And in the middle of that strike of the telephone company workers, there was a general strike supported by almost all the labor movement in Puerto Rico, but we know that some of the unions didn't put all their effort.
And what was the role of the AFL-CIO unions?
That's the thing, that actually this was very near the privatization of the health care system, and
how did that happen? The privatization of the healthcare system in Puerto Rico?
Well, this was the same governor, Rosselló. He sold all the public hospital and dispensaries, medical centers. He sold them because he was going to give this card that was like the insurance, the reform, the health insurance reform, and it was going to be so great. And he sold all the hospital, we say a precio de pescado bombao, really cheap. It was corruption everywhere. I mean, the hospital.
And who did he sell them to?
To
Humana and different
people, people from the party, party people, that they gave money for the campaign and for the party, and it was a corruption. American international companies, and I think also Puerto Ricans. I mean.
So at that time, I understand Andy Stern went to Puerto Rico and met with the governor?
Yeah, exactly.
What
happened? And actually the president of the AFL-CIO in that moment, Jose Rodriguez Baez, he didn't fight against the privatization. I mean, and actually he didn't fight a lot against the privatization of the electric company either. Yeah. And he was a leader of the PSP previously in the 70s, but now they are, they favor the Partido Popular Democrático, which is like favoring the Democrats here in the United States. But the thing is that the PPT, returning back to the PPT was founded by a group of independentistas and socialists. That the independence movement in Puerto Rico, sadly to say, but it's really a big minority. I mean, it's probably 4 or 5% of the people believe in the independence of Puerto Rico, and but as we can see in this fight against the privatization of the electric telephone company, most of the people are against some neoliberal policies that have been applied in Puerto Rico, particularly the privatization. So we are trying to create a movement, the Working Peoples Party, that even when it's not independentista, it tries to unite all the workers and all the people that are against the neoliberal policies. And we proposed an economic program that we know that it's not going to be able to implement. We are not going to be able to implement it in the actual colonial status. But the majority of the people don't believe that, don't know that. So we have a program that is good for the people. We have to create jobs, permanent jobs. We have to do it with cooperatives. Cooperatives is fine. Strengthening the public sector and going against the privatization, recover some of the companies that are important for the country, and then try to make an economic development which is contrary of what has been doing, that U.S. companies go to Puerto Rico and they take out the wealth and they pay low salaries, and then they don't pay taxes, because the centerpiece of the economic development of Puerto Rico has been to bring companies from the United States and other countries, but mainly from the United States, to produce in Puerto Rico to export, and with no taxes. And a lot of wealth is produced in Puerto Rico, but it's taken out. So it's not reinvested in Puerto Rico. It creates a very minimum amount of jobs.
And that's why people have to immigrate, leave the country.
Exactly.
They're forced to economically.
Exactly. The economic crisis in Puerto Rico has been going, down and down, deeper and deeper. It's a complete disaster.
Ending the Puerto Rican working class. How can you do that just in one country? Just in Puerto Rico?
That's one of the weakest points of our party. We haven't been able to have probably the time. Not that we don't think that it's important to establish international links. It's not possible. It's not possible to develop a country defending the working class if you don't have support and links with the workers around the world. We are clear about that, and we need to work on that much more than we have done.
And what is the role of the AFL-CIO in Puerto Rico?
Well, the AFL-CIO in Puerto Rico, they have since. They were from the beginning for a long time. AFL, exactly.
Gompers,
Gompers support Santiago Iglesias Pantin, and he was that was important for the first Partido Socialista, the first socialist party founded by Santiago Iglesias Pantin. It was pro-statehood. They had in their platform to make Puerto Rico a part of the United States. And that was influenced by Gompers, definitely.
So Gompers wanted Puerto Rico to become a part of the United States.
Sure.
Why did he do that? Why did he say that it should be part of the United States?
Well, in the time, actually some people in Puerto Rico believed that the United States was gonna bring some liberties for the country, that we didn't have with Spain. And they thought that they believed,
going to help you.
Yeah, they want to help and bring liberty, and in the case of Santiago Iglesias Pantin, that they were going to help the labor movement. Some of them, after some years, realized that it wasn't it wasn't happening that way. I mean, one of the first Partido Independentista, the first independence party that was founded in Puerto Rico, was founded by a guy that was pro-statehood before, in the invasion, Rosendo Matienzo Cintrón. he defended that Puerto Rico be part of the United States. And after he saw what the United States did in Puerto Rico the first years, he changed the other way, and he founded the Partido Independentista. And so many people, I mean, the independence movement in the first decades was a very, very strong movement. Actually, Muñoz Marin, that founded the Commonwealth, Puerto Rico, that we still have since 1950, 51, 52. 52 was officially established. He was initially independentista. He was pro-independence. And the independence movement was and a socialist, yeah. The independence movement was really strong, and the United States never conceded independence for Puerto Rico. Clearly.
So United States looks at Puerto Rico as a source for cheap labor,
sure,
for exploitation.
Exactly. Classic imperialism. And it was a cheap labor, and the first decades, mainly agriculture. Sugar companies, American sugar companies came. They took the land, and they produced sugar for the United States.
So the present situation of the bankruptcy in Puerto Rico, the governor now says that what is his program to solve this bankruptcy?
Well, his program to solve the bankruptcy is to take the money out of the people and of the working class. I mean, he has increased taxes all the way around. We have this evil, like the sales tax, that was established in 2005, 2006, 7% sales tax. We didn't have any of that. I mean, we paid taxes in April. Everybody in April has to pay taxes that have over the money that have earned during the year. And now we have those taxes and sales tax also. And now, recently, the governor increased the taxes to 11.5%. He wanted a 16%. But people fought, and
that's a regressive tax.
Definitely.
What did people do to oppose the sales tax?
Yeah, we did some things. There were some mobilizations. Actually, university students and universities in general, interesting because the students that usually protest in Puerto Rico are the students from the University of Puerto Rico, and mainly from Rio Piedras, another campus of the University of Puerto Rico, public university. This tax was going to apply for every university. So students from the private universities, they mobilized, and they did a huge mobilization, like 40, 50,000, mainly students, but also, employees, university employees and professors and stuff like that, and other people, but mainly students from universities, private and public universities, mobilized against this sales tax that it was originally meant to be 16%. And unions, and actually there was a campamento, like a, they established like a camping
against
and they went to the capital. They established some camp site over there, and that was mainly by the UTIER, which is the union in the electric company, one of the strongest unions in Puerto Rico, probably the strongest union after the teachers union was almost destroyed.
Now the teachers union, there was a struggle there to bring in charters into Puerto Rico. What was that all about?
Yeah, well, the privatization of the education, which is going on in several parts of the world, it's going on in Puerto Rico too. There's intentions of bringing the charter schools, and actually the Federation of Teachers, when it was really strong, they made a fight. They fought against the charter school, and I think they won that battle momentarily, but it's going on again.
It's continuing. What was
It's
the role of the
continuing.
American Federation of Teachers and
The American
SEIU?
Yeah, the SEIU is involved now because the Federation of Teachers was affiliated to the American Federation of Teachers, the Federation of Teachers of Puerto Rico. They were affiliated, and they made a campaign. I think it was like probably 10 years ago, something like that. And then they disaffiliated from the American Federation of Teachers. So they I don't think they are involved in any of the teachers unions right now, but they do have organization. They do have workers organized in the maintenance level of schools.
Maintenance of schools.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think they favor the charter schools because I mean, workers know that they are gonna be fired, you know, and so. But I'm not sure about the.
But the SEIU was raiding the union. They tried to set up a separate organization of principals, and what was that?
Yes,
all about?
actually, the SEIU tried to. I think the Association of Teachers, which is the most conservative of the unions, they were affiliated to the SEIU. When they went to elections to try to be the representative of the teachers, and the Federation of Teachers, which had been decertified because they went into an illegal strike under Law 45, which prohibits strikes, and they did one. And some other groups that were part before of the Federation of Teachers, they unite against the Association of Teachers, considering that the Association of Teachers is linked to the one of the political parties in Puerto Rico, the Partido Popular Democrático, the Popular Democratic Party. And in that elections were probably in 2005, something like that. I'm not exactly sure about that year. The no won the elections. So no, we don't want any representative because we don't want these guys that, and they were part of the SEIU. I think after that election, SEIU put a lot of money there. I mean, millions of dollars to win to win that election, and they lost it. I mean, teachers, they wanted to have a union, but not that union.
What do you think about the idea of American unions spending millions of dollars in Puerto Rico to supposedly organize when the majority of workers in the United States are unorganized?
Yeah, that's terrible. I mean, that's terrible. When Governor Rosselló put forward Law 45, there were Law 45 allowed unions in the central government, and most of the agencies of the government, they had local unions that even when they didn't have the right to collective bargaining, they were unions, and they did some, you know, strikes actually, and you know, actions for, you know, for salary increases and to improve conditions and stuff like that. Some of them were bureaucratic. They didn't do what, you know. There were not models probably of what a union should be. But when the Law 45 allowed the unionization in these agencies, then U.S. unions came with lots of money, with full-time organizers, and they just, you know, kicked out the local unions.
Was that a business opportunity?
Definitely. Definitely.
I think that was to get dues members.
Actually, let me tell you something. In the crisis, the economic crisis of Puerto Rico, one of the things that Luis Fortuño did, besides firing 20 to 30,000 public employees, he froze the contracts. And one of the big movements by the U.S. unions, you know, talking with Rosselló, because initially he was gonna freeze also the quotas, what's
The
it?
fees.
The
The dues.
the dues.
Oh, the dues.
And they they cabildearon, they move and
They lobby.
they lobbied a lot, and then the dues were okay. So the workers were paying dues for the union, and they didn't have any contract. That's terrible, and that's that's business.
That's business unionism?
Business unions.
Is that right that Law 45 prohibited the right to strike
Yeah.
in these unions that the AFL-CIO organized?
Yeah.
So
And-
before the unions were doing strikes, and when the AFL-CIO, they could not do strikes.
They could not do, and they won't do it, I mean, the Federation of Teachers, the left was organized in that union. They didn't have the leadership in the union at that moment, but they agreed to enter under Law 45. I mean, they were forced to do it because they didn't want that law. They fought for the amendments of the law to provide for to make strike legal. I mean, it must be legal. I mean, it's the only thing that the worker has to make pressure to the employer, in this case the government. I mean, to stop working. I mean, that should be a right. I mean, and they didn't get it. So, but they agreed to try to make the collective bargaining under that law, stating that they were gonna strike whenever they had to, and actually they did. And they were decertified and destroyed eventually.
So this American unions, would you say this is their role in Puerto Rico as labor imperialism? Do they play a role of supporting capitalism in Puerto Rico?
I don't like that word imperialism related for labor because imperialism is like has a very specific context of analyzing what exporting capital and stuff like that. But it's very similar. I mean, it's very similar. And labor unions, even U.S. labor unions, sometimes they have to fight. I mean, because if they don't, workers would know better than that. But that's not their mission to fight. I mean, they are like in the middle.
Management partnerships, is that what they are?
Yeah, exactly. And they are in the middle of the employers and the workers. They are in the middle trying to that things go
Smooth. Brokers.
Yeah, exactly. That things go smooth. Workers don't mobilize against anything because they can overthrow them eventually. And that's terrible. That's terrible.
Now, so the governor, his plan for bankruptcy is to increase sales tax. What else does he want to do?
Okay, they have a lot of neoliberal policies going on. They have been freezing labor contracts. They have reducing the jornada de trabajo, the work hours for workers, and that's been going on, especially in the municipalities, because if the central government is bankrupt, the municipalities are even worse. So there are some of the municipal employees have been their work hours reduced.
So how do they survive?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, they should be earning like probably $500, $600 a month. I mean, terrible.
So
that's part of the reason that people are going out of the country. I mean, they are migrating to the United States. They are leaving the country like 40,000 people a year since 2008. So it's terrible. I mean, the immigration to the U.S. is taking similar numbers as in the 50s, where the immigration was, a big thing. And his governor is attacking working class conditions all the way. I mean, reducing the government size, because that's part of the campaign, is that the problem is that the government is too big. And no matter how you prove that statistically the government in Puerto Rico is not bigger than than most of the states in the United States and most of the countries, most of the nations of the world. The government in Puerto Rico is not big compared to the population. The problem in Puerto Rico is that the private sector is very little. It's small. The private sector is small. So if you keep people out from the government, if you make the government smaller, you're just increasing unemployment. And, you know, people don't have jobs in the private sector. Private sector is not generating jobs. So if you know, but that's part of the campaign, that the government is too big and that the salaries are too high. There's a huge campaign against the working conditions of the public employees.
And what is the average salary of a public employee in Puerto Rico?
It's it should be of a public employee. You mean it's I don't have the exact figure now, but it should be around $18,000 a year. It's not high. It's not high. Maybe 20, something like that.
So 18 or 20,000 is the average salary of a public employee. So that's not a lot of money.
No, definitely.
With the cost of living.
Definitely
what is the
not.
cost of living in Puerto Rico? Is it high?
It's high. It's high. Yeah, it's high. The public employees that have the higher salaries are the ones that are unionized. That's the whole thing of it. If you have strong unions, the workers, you know, will get better conditions. And now there's a campaign that the economic problem of Puerto Rico is that some workers have high salaries, you know, and they are, you know, and it's sad to say, but the government has had an impact on the majority of the people that believe that thing, you know, and then they have this attacks against the electric workers, that they have the problem is that they have salaries too high, and the leaders of that union have demonstrated that, like, and because part of the campaign of the government is that the electricity cost is high because the salaries of the workers is high. And the Figueroa Jaramillo has been very good in demonstrating that the salaries form like 4 or 5% of the electricity cost. But, you know, he's not in the media all the time. You know, media is attacking the workers, you know, following the campaign.
And they would sell off. They want to sell off the electric utility.
Yeah, they want to do it.
And who would buy it?
Well, what they have done in the past, and probably they will go deeper in that, is that they are privatizing the production of electricity, and they keep in state hands the distribution of the electricity, because that's the part that is less profit. So the profits go to the private sector, and the the rest, you know. You socialize la pérdida, ¿cómo es la?
The profitable section.
The profitable section, you privatize that. The non-profitable section, then the government
the public
keeps
takes over.
Keeps
and
it.
Is your party opposing privatization?
Oh, definitely. We fight privatization, and we fight for a much stronger public sector. I mean, that's important for working conditions, to guarantee, the government has to guarantee some public service for all the people. I mean, education should be free, electricity should be as low cost as possible, housing should be very low cost for working people, and healthcare should be, we believe in universal healthcare. So it should be public owned. I mean.
So these companies, American companies, Humana, these big companies, healthcare companies, you're for kicking them out of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, mainly. I mean, the problem in Puerto Rico is that we have medical insurance for a lot of people, poor people, and that system costs a lot of money, and most of the money it's not even in the hands of the doctors or the hospitals, in the insurance companies. The insurance companies are like the intermediaries, and we don't need them. We don't need them. The government should own that and have a unique pay system, that the government pays for this system. We don't need the intermediaries. They are keeping a huge amount of money.
And the unions in Puerto Rico, they've been declining in size. There's been an attack on unions in Puerto Rico. Do you see a revival in the labor movement in Puerto Rico, in the working class?
Have to say that we don't see it. Since Law 45, that there was a strong division in the labor movement because of the U.S. unions against the local unions and independent unions. Since 1998, we have not recovered from that division. And the labor working class is demoralized, demobilized, and it's a terrible moment to try to build a working people's party. But we are conscious about that.
But there's a big movement of the students against privatization.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that? The effect that had on Puerto Rico.
Actually, in the last years, there have been some important mobilizations. But it's not that we don't mobilize against anything. I just talked before about the mobilization against the tax increase, the recent tax increase. There was a huge strike in the University of Puerto Rico in 2010 and 2011 in the 11 campus. They were on strike at the same time. I think that's probably the first time ever that has happened. It was a huge moment. Before that, that was under Governor Fortuño, in the same party as Rosselló. Fortuño is a Republican, known Republican, and he approved what we called Ley 7, Law 7, of 2009. In 2009, he came to the position of governor, and one of the first laws, the 7th, was to fire. Actually, there has a lot of things. One of them was he fired we don't know exactly the number, but it was between 20,000 and 30,000 employees, public employees. He frozen the contracts and stuff like that. And there was a big mobilization of the labor movement against that law. That was on the October 15 of 2009. The last big mobilization of the labor movement since probably the big mobilizations against the privatization of the telephone company. Huge marches, 2 of them. The labor movement could agree on the date, October 15, but there were 2 marches. U.S. unions in one street, and the local independent unions in the other. I think that it's not unfair if I say it that way. I don't think there were, probably in the U.S. union side, there were maybe one or other independent union, but mainly that was the division. 2 big marches, probably 50, 60,000 people mobilized against that law. It was a terrible law. But after that date, that was it. In 2010, the governor approved, or the government of the University of Puerto Rico, they approved an increase in the tuition. It was a quota. It was a special. Each semester, the students had to pay, besides their normal tuition, $200 each semester. that's a lot of money compared to the tuition in Puerto Rico. The cost of the education, public university in Puerto Rico is really low compared to the United States. So $400 for a year is a lot of money. It was practically doubling the tuition cost. So there was a huge strike in the University of Puerto Rico, the students, as I said, in the 11th campus. And that movement, since it was against the governor Fortuño, that had approved Ley 7, the Law 7, and these measures against the working people. So it received a lot of support from Puerto Rican people. The strike was, like, at last, there's a sector that is opposing the government. And it was a very, actually, labor movement support the strike. And the students won in 2010. They had to get back the increase in the tuition. But then they did it in January, in the second semester. And there was another strike. And that strike didn't get that much support. It was repressed. I mean, the government mobilized the police, la Fuerza de Choque, the SWAT, special forces, tactical SWAT, and they arrested many students. What they did to paralyze the university was they blocked it, exactly. And then they arrested hundreds of students.
And did your union support the strike of the students?
They supported the first one. The second one, it was not supported by many people, and they lost the strike. Well, they lost in the sense that they kept the tuition increase, but actually the governor that is now the governor Padilla from the other party. He promised that he was going to eliminate that quota, the hikes, and he did. But now they are trying to increase the tuition each year. So that's another fight that the students. But the students did a huge fight. And they lose in one sense, but that happens a lot with the students' strikes. That maybe you lose the battle you're doing in that moment, but then the effects of the strike will take some years to see. That happened. For example, I participated in a student strike in 1981 against an increase in tuition. We were paying $5 the credit in 1981, and they increased it to $15 a credit. So they tripled the tuition. And we made a huge strike, massive. It was really impressive. We were 6 months in strike, 6 months. And we lost in the sense that the increase remained. But it took them 12 years to increase another time. So the strike, in that sense, it's not, we didn't lose.
What is the role of your union now? You don't have democratic rights. I understand Dennis Rivera was involved in.
Well, we don't have a right to collective bargaining. I'm a member of. I'm in the National Council of the Puerto Rican Association of University Professors. We call it A.P.P.U, Asociación Puertorriqueña de Profesores Universitarios, and we have been fighting for collective bargaining since A.P.P.U was founded in 1961. And in 1980, in the 80s, the A.P.P.U collected endorsements from the professors, and they went to ask the administration to recognize the collective bargaining for the professors, university professors. And the University of, actually the Labor's Relation Board recognized the right of the professors to collective bargaining. And then the university went to the court. The courts spent like 15 years to decide. In 1994, the Supreme Court of Puerto Rico, in a divided decision, 4-3, 3-2, there were only 5 members at that moment, 3-2, they decided that we didn't have the right to collective bargaining because to form a union because we are managers, and they based the case on the Yeshiva University. The Yeshiva University has been applied in the United States for private university professors, in any case in public university. So it was a very political based decision. I mean, it's political in the bad sense of the word. I mean, we knew it was a wrong decision, but I mean, that was the Supreme Court. So in this, that was in 1994. Recently, last year, the A.P.P.U started again a process to collect signatures and endorsement for the collective bargaining, and we collected around more than 50% of the university professors in the 11 campus, which are like almost 4,000 people. We collected almost 2,000, so it's less than 4,000. We collected more than 50%, and we thought that was enough to state for a democratic statement. I mean, the majority of the professors want this. I mean, recognize it. And Dennis Rivera is part of the council of the University of Puerto Rico, the government of the University of Puerto Rico. That government is composed of 13 members. 10 of them are appointed by the governor, and there are 9 of them. There are 2 professors who supported the collective bargaining for the professors, 2 students who supported the process, the 4 that are from the community. The other 9 are appointed by the governor, but one of them is Dennis Rivera. Dennis Rivera is a famous union leader in the United States, leader of the SEIU. I think he's retired now, but he obviously has his contacts, and we thought that he has his principles put together. I mean, he made a compromise with us that he was going to support the petition that we were making for the recognition of the collective bargaining process for the professors, and that he was going to get some other support. So we thought that we were going to have at least 6 votes with the 2 students and the 2 professors, Dennis, and one that is very influenced by Dennis, and that he could influence some other guy, the vice president of the council. Thing is that, so we thought that maybe we can win this thing 7-6. I mean, thing is that we lost 7-4. Dennis didn't show up to the meeting, and the lady that he was gonna bring us to vote for us didn't go to the meeting. So we got the 4 votes that are the representatives of the community, these 2 students and 2 professors. And now we are gonna go to the Relations Board again. We know they're gonna say that the Supreme Court has a decision, so we're gonna elevate the case to the Supreme Court again. And it's gonna take 15 more years to decide. And I believe that as far as the professors don't go to the streets and close the university, we're not gonna get the right to negotiate. That's as simple as that. Actually, the other workers in the University of Puerto Rico, they negotiate. They don't have a formal law that recognizes their right to negotiate, but they do because they have gained that right in the streets. In the 1970s, they closed the university, and they forced the administration to recognize their right to have a contract. We haven't done so. Okay. But Dennis, I mean, we thought we had an ally.
You had hopes.
Yeah, and I mean, and we knew, who we were dealing with, but we thought, well, he cannot vote against us. I mean, he cannot do that. What he can do is probably not try to influence anybody. I mean, okay, I will vote for them. You just vote against. But we didn't think about this other option. Don't show up to the meeting. Wow, it was terrible. He knew and actually the day before, he said to us that he was gonna be there. and vote for it. The day before, and several days before that day, he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna be there. Count on me."
He betrayed you.
That's the way it is. That's the word that one of the prophetic board told me that exact words. He betrayed us.
Yeah.
There are two of them, so